to look at on one of these topics because it's for some reason become a big problem now. Yeah, I didn't want to talk about this, but again, I'm a bit forced to because it seems to be such a huge issue that will. What the hell's that noise? No, it's spiraling out of control and it will impact our lives and eventually gaming. So if you're a gamer, you also need to listen because this is important. So there's been terrible news across the UK about anti-immigration garbage, and it's been so propagandized that it literally has no meaning anymore. Like, there's literally no reason to believe it, and people believe it anyway. But there's an even more worrying trend where younger people are falling for bigotry, and I've noticed this myself. I did see a post on the UK politics subreddit about how younger people are becoming more bigoted, and there's been like an uptick in that, and I think some of it's to do with like social masking and stuff. I think other parts of it are literally coming from people they're close to, and I surprisingly have experience with this myself. So yeah, like sometimes these beliefs come from people who've been brought up that way. Whether it's like a father, mother, or even grandfather, or even guardians, like there's different places this can come from and become a problem. And I think that's generally where these can occur and just start happening. But it's not often based on any reasoning. And when you look at what's going on in the UK right now, there's this common belief that migrants are taking jobs, but for some reason it's been confused with migrants also taking taxpayer money. So which is it? Like, people have no clue what they're talking about, and this fact really makes it obvious. But I think the reason why young people are more likely to become bigoted is obviously because of apathy. And it's something you develop if you've been in a bad enough situation for a long time, and I've experienced this myself. In my last house, I was actually bullied by the other housemate, and he just wouldn't leave me alone. If anything, like, I have sensory issues, and every single noise he made, every single visual nightmare he made, it was just too much. And on top of that, he threatened to kill me and my family. And he also assumed a lot of things about people I knew and people who were around even. So it's like really ugly sort of situation. And I forgot where I was going with this actually. Yeah, being in a bad situation, has it? It sort of led me to really odd beliefs and paranoia, and paired with anxiety, it's not a good match. They can actually trust me on that because it gets really bad. And the anxiety makes me think of basically things that will possibly happen and will very much happen. Just one example is I think that the people who are supporting me, for example, to supposedly help me go around life, are literally against me. And I don't know for certain whether that's true, but obviously the anxiety in me makes me think it's probably true, and I need to be careful. Because it can be just a case of like someone saying, "Oh, we don't support you anymore." That's it. I don't know what to do with my life at that point. But it also led me down this route of becoming apathetic because I was in this bad situation, this bad housemate, and I started to have beliefs around not really caring about people anymore. Literally wishing them dead. Like, there was something that happened. And one of the things that still gets me now is there's like a post on the autism subreddit, and it's about how a child was sexually harassing an adult woman, And I literally said, like, you need to traumatise them, which is not a normal thing to say, unhelpful advice. At the time, it didn't really click to me that that would be a very harmful thing to do. And a bunch of people, rightfully so, called me out on it. So that was deserved. And when I realised what caused me to even say that, it was literally because of the situation I was in. I just didn't give a shit. I felt like so many children had ruined my life. Caused it to be worse than it is. Something I've done on pause, but yeah, the trauma led me to say things that were kind of abusive. Like I told someone to traumatise a child who was sexually harassing them, and they got called out on it, rightfully so. And I realised that it's all linked back to the bad housemate I had. So, yeah, that caused a lot of problems, and even after reporting him to the police, I didn't get any sort of help from that. Like, nothing was done about him, so I was just left to my own devices essentially, and I eventually began to lose my mind. And that's sort of why it happens and why so many young people can end up in these darker places. I think it's even worse if you've been treated badly your whole life and really you just don't care about the world anymore, you just want to see it burn. And, you know, that happens because, again, people have mistreated you your whole life and never shown kindness. I've been lucky to have been shown kindness, but it hasn't always been the case. I suppose the thing stopping me is I just wouldn't want to be a victim in this situation. That's obviously why I never turned apathetic despite everything that was happening. And that does sort of lead on to the topic at hand, which is like why young people are becoming more bigoted, and it's again, it's literally related to either family or how the world has mistreated them. And yeah, like, it's no surprise, like the only people taught to you are family. That's going to happen. And if that's the only like information you can trust as well, it's like that's just why. But it also shows that people are very gullible as well and very biased, which is a dangerous thing. In my experience, it's never led to a good result. And I say this having been someone who was previously against immigrants and even like gay marriage to an extent, even trans rights. But the things that changed me were the information that exists that essentially refute the points. And they were never reasonable points to begin with, so it just really wasn't any case of, oh, these things are correct. There wasn't. There was no evidence. And using critical thinking, you would also see that a lot of the supposed evidence isn't actually strong evidence. And it does lead on to like some of these like bullet points that I see with obviously the anti-immigration stuff now. People associating it again with like jobs and taxpayer money, when the actual problem is billionaires, the people who have all the money, who could be funding proper jobs for people and obviously a safer planet. They're not being taxed. So that's why we're being taxed. And that's the problem. I don't know too much about this sort of topic, so I can't speak on it too much. Just an outsider looking in, I just see that there's so many injustices in the economic system and how people who are just completely callous and obviously stinking rich just seem to get away with everything. And even landlords to an extent who I think technically are like middle class, probably. They don't get punished for anything. They're killing kids in apartments with mould because they don't act on it. And they blame the people in there for it. And it's literally their job to keep the place safe. And just for the record, it's killing British kids. Like, isn't just migrant kids, it's like British kids. So why are we not holding them accountable? Like, whenever you look at the evidence behind all this, it's often linked to a biased news source. I only found this out the other day when the TikTok short came on, and yeah, it was actually a fucking shitty place called GB News trying to rile up a crowd by saying a migrant had raped some children. And yeah, that's objectively a bad thing. But people are linking this, as the news story did essentially, with all migrants. So it's basically painting one person of tens of thousands, potentially millions, of being rapists, and people who are for some reason overreacting and saying they're not safe in a country where migrants exist and they can rape their children. This doesn't make any fucking logical sense. Because if you look at it on the opposite spectrum, like if a migrant saying this to British people, suddenly, like, they're the problem. It's not the British people. But if you call the British people out, like I'm calling us out on it, where we do more crime per population than migrants do, it's a non-issue. So it makes me question what are the priorities here? What the hell exactly are people defending? And yeah, we know the billionaires thing, but there has to be more, right? Because this is just completely dystopian and so detached from reality. It almost doesn't matter that the facts exist and people are ignoring it just for convenience sake. And again, like, when you look at the correlations that people make, like going on to like the job situation now, why there's like no jobs. The news is basically painting it that immigrants are taking jobs. And again, this can be far from the fact. It turns out that billionaires are the ones creating less jobs. They're replacing people with machines and AI. They're paying the lowest wages they can just so they can profit. And yet for some reason we're pinning it on immigrants. And even like benefits, like, what the fuck is wrong with this world? It is like such an obvious thing as well. Like, billionaires obviously run the entire country, and one of the common things I've noticed actually is like the people pushing these points and being like stop the boats and anti-immigrant and just racist, because yes, believe it or not, discriminating against someone's skin colour or race is actually racism. Criticising them is fine, but not for the obviously being born somewhere. Like just being different, being non-British like that. That's fine, but obviously associating shit like that is bad. That is literal racism. That's what it means. But going on to that topic, the people who commonly accuse them of this are literally older people. That's the scary thing with older people, unfortunately, is they've grown up in a generation where you either watch TV for news or read the newspaper, and they're not really used to social media. But they've started to invade social media and start to look at biased sources, essentially. And one of the things that's also scary about social media, I saw this the other day actually, the reason people are quitting social media is because there's so much hate content, and yeah, I've never really approached topics with hatred really. It's more like dislike, but still, people prefer hatred and outrage over positive stories, and that's really saddening. It's like, it reminds me of when I was playing a gym practice, for example, and you know, the new trailer for like, I think that Animals, I got well over like 2 million views, I think, in like the first 24 hours. But at the same time, no one was close to that video release. There was a video by a channel I watched called Special Books by Special Kids, where a can't remember what disability it had, but there was this kid with a disability that I wasn't too familiar with, but it was important to know. It was just fascinating to see as well. And that video only got about 100,000 views. And it just made me think, what the fuck? So people are prioritising pleasure over education as well. So the issue isn't just hatred on social media, it's also the fact we live in like a pleasure fantasy. And yeah, we all need that. Like, we all like cat videos and stuff, I'm not denying that. But holy shit, I think we need some mandatory empathy. This is where we have so many problems. When people are not speaking to each other about these topics and just saying things like, stone the facts, for example. That's one I used to hear sometimes. Those people have never talked to a gay person. They've never talked to anyone LGBTQ+. And even more damning, they don't even know what the fuck it is. So they base off assumptions and also like just what I call like armchair logic, I guess. They say most things are armchair logic because they literally just sit in a chair, think about it, and yeah, they reach their conclusions that way because they're stuck in their own heads and they haven't referred to anything, they haven't done research. And I even tried to do research on like the immigration topic, and there are so many wrong sources and biased sources on this because they're not even about immigration. Like the UK government site, when I tried to look at statistics, for some reason Google said there were over 133 million immigrants in the UK. And the UK has 68 million people. That doesn't sound right. And I'm not a mathematician, but I know that number is very fucking wrong. And given that I go out on the streets every now and then to go to a restaurant or go shopping, I see prominently white people, white British people. So if you're telling me that our country is like 66% immigrants, why the fuck aren't we seeing more of them? Like, logically and anecdotally, we should be seeing more, but there isn't. So that's obviously wrong. And I looked into it further and it's saying new arrivals. But again, where are they? This doesn't make any sense. It's literally like they pulled a number out their arse. And so I did a bit more digging, and it's like I could find very few sources actually reporting on the numbers, and it just made me think, well, there's not really a case here. All this immigration stuff I could easily be convinced by if there were actual numbers, actual evidence, then why am I not finding it? Because nothing works. Like, the critical thinker of me doesn't see any sort of evidence here. So again, I'm confused. I just don't know how we figure this out. I said that I'm willing to change sides if there is evidence. But at the moment I stand with immigrants because I support them. Well, there's no determining factor, let alone evidence, that inherently means that they're going to commit crimes and commit moral atrocities. And logically you need to justify that as well. Which is why, again, the armchair sort of logic sort of fails here. Again, there's no correlation. These numbers I just found are just so baffling. Like, there's no way these are actually the real numbers. It just doesn't seem true to me. If you're saying like 133,000, like, yeah, sure. But again, that makes them in a minority. So even trying to look at hypotheticals and what ifs here, nothing adds up. So what even is the point? Where is this argument coming from? So, yeah, and to obviously clearly answer the question as well, like, why young people are it can turn into a side of hatred. It's literally because there's a correlation here that it's so convincing that they don't see otherwise. And oddly enough, it's like older people that are complaining about this more commonly, but younger people are getting on board because they don't see it any other way for some reason, and obviously media is biased. And also, just the other thing, like, I wear the clippy avatar because corporations are ruining our internet basically and our lives. But they're doing it in a way where, say I'm talking about, for example, that I don't know, tampons. Let's just say tampons. If I talk about the tampons enough times, I say tampon 3 times in the mirror with my phone near me, I'll get a tampon advert. And if I go onto Amazon right now, I'll say tampon, 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 tampon. What am I going to get recommended? Let's see. Tampon, 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 tampon. Women's fashion, close enough. It's like, yeah, like those that do actually monitor you and track you will literally use that as your advertisement and use it as your bias. So they're going to recommend you that, but even though I'm not seeing it on Amazon, I'm going to see it elsewhere. Like, actually, I could go on YouTube on my phone because that commonly recommends stupid adverts. Because for some reason it started showing adverts on Edge, I don't know why. I think I need to go on a video. Just do jazz because I listen to that a lot. Tampons, tampons, need home care wear, nope. But I have seen this happen to people I know, where you talk about a topic and it appears in adverts. And it can be dangerous as well because the adverts aren't always genuine. They're sometimes really malicious. And sometimes even illegal, I think. But again, this is the danger here. I guarantee you, if you talk about it enough, it's going to show up, and that's why this all happens. And when hate is the biggest weapon at the moment, that's going to become the only weapon that people have and will rally behind. And yeah, corporations don't help that in trying to market it towards you. Again, it's all marketing. Like, all this anti-immigration stuff is literally marketing. And it's leading me to say that instead of stop the boats, it's literally the opposite of it is stop the billionaires. That's literally what we need to be doing, but at the same time, I think we need to be labelling people for what they are. That way they realise the error in their ways. And I don't know a better phrase. I think there's probably going to be someone out there who's found something better. We need to be calling the stop the boats people something like billionaire suck-ups or something. Billionaire bum bodies. BBB. Yeah, that'll work. Billionaire bum bodies. Because they're literally sucking up to that. They're believing every word, hanging on to it. And they're willing to go to bed with a billionaire just because they want to believe a convenient truth. A convenient lie, it's not truth actually. But they believe it's a convenient truth in their heads. So that's why it's gotten so out of hand. So yeah, I think I still stand corrected on this. No matter how many times I've spoken about it. So young people are being brainwashed, and it's because again they're in bad situations and say that they're being misinformed by either family or the internet or anything. And I think for kids growing up at this age it's especially dangerous, which is why we need to address this problem sooner rather than later. You know, if we want to protect the kids, kick out the billionaires, or tax them, for taxing them, because yeah, we'll probably get more done. We'll probably see more change. But if we don't do that, then, well, we're fucked, I'm afraid. And children are going to get harmed more. And that's scary. I literally don't want that to happen. It's a horrific thing to happen. And, yeah, like, I don't know what else to say here because it's like, what the fuck is wrong with this world now? It's unbelievable. So yeah. Also, I think my advice for young people, at least, because I know older people are quite reluctant anyway to even talk to young people and even sort of discuss these topics. It's actually to talk to people of like the opposite side. You know, you might be convinced by immigration now, but do your research and also look for things that sort of counteract your own points, because that's the only way you can know you're actually right in it and also on the right side of history. Because one of the things that people seem to ignore here is how all this situation would look in the face of history. Because if it looked bad, then yeah, that would be a big stain on not only just humans but British culture. Yeah, we've had our fair share of bad in culture. I don't know the specifics on. No doubt they exist. I had heard something about like terrible things in World War Two, but yeah, we'll look back on this situation in shame, especially if it goes through, and they'll probably forever be known as like the billionaire love boat, because that's literally what's going on. These billionaires are trying to undermine minorities to push the blame onto them when it's actually the billionaire's fault. And it also shows the willingness to not allow like minorities into work as well, because obviously depending on like the minority you're in, it depends. Like there's different issues that come with it, but statistically and scientifically, people who are of a minority feel marginalised, and it's by society standards, not just billionaires, but societies, and that ends up causing mental health issues, which then causes people to be unable to work or as effective. And that's why the billionaires care about this so much. That's why they want minorities out. And if you have a disabled brother or sister or whoever in your family, in your life, they want them gone too. They'll throw them in the body pile too. That's literally what they're aiming to do. Uh, I think one of the best ways to describe the situation in the UK at the moment is literally it's becoming another North Korea, especially with like mass surveillance happening, supposedly happening. You just don't feel safe anymore, and people who are of these minorities have no chance. You know, they're trying to put women back in the kitchens because obviously they're not turning a profit. There's an inherent bias against them. There's also like weird fucking power fantasy of these billionaires, hence like Epstein and Trump being complete cunts. And there's like so much more that I probably haven't even touched on. But yeah, they're doing this to immigrants so that they can get the rest of us out. It's a domino effect, and you've played right into their hands. And I think if you have, you should be ashamed of yourself. This is one of the most despicable things that I've seen in recent times. You know, the ICE stuff in America was bad. The Trump stuff in America was bad, so the Epstein files. But the immigration stuff here is a whole thing entirely because it's not based on reasoning. At least people in the US did have a reason for believing what they believe. Here, it's literally just people rolled up by a single fucking news article. And it's just fucking disgusting. And I don't think I've ever felt more shame as a British person who've gone through a lot, like possibly cutting like disability benefits, putting people on the streets because they're a single mum. Like, there's so many horrific things that have happened, but this, I don't know, it probably takes the cake at the moment because it's so bad. It's a very toxic cake, to be honest. Yeah, and I don't feel safe seeing anyone anymore. I literally feel excluded from the world as a white British person because there's so much racism now and so much scaremongering people are sucked up to, and again, it's a domino effect. once immigrants are gone, if this ever goes through, the next people probably will be queer people, disabled people. There are so many different minorities that are going to come after. We don't know which one's next, but it will happen. And really, this is really the point where we need to rise up against billionaires, not each other. So, yeah, thanks for listening, and see everyone another time.